Hello, I'm Ted Leverette, broadcasting from partneroncall.com. I'm the original business buyer advocate. For more than 30 years, I've been helping people find and buy the right businesses the right way. Our topic today is why buy-sell transactions fall through and what to do about it. Our focus is on small and mid-sized businesses. I'm going to open with a few observations and tips that are so important, I don't want to cover them within the rest of the webinar. Things go sideways for buyers and sellers. It happens when their behavior is deceptive, unrealistic, or abusive. Dithering and dragging your feet also craters deals. And lots of other things, some of which I'm covering in this webinar. But right now, we're going to consider a few of the least perceived but most prevalent causes for cratering deals, deals that should have occurred, the kinds of deals you want but cannot make. You see, the sad truth, and it's pretty costly, is too many searchers and sellers crater their opportunity, and they do it too early in their interactions. Okay, please write this down. It's a big tip. It can soften your mistakes. Be likable. That's right, be likable. Aren't we more forgiving of people we like? And don't we give them the benefit of the doubt? Instead of walking away, don't we try to reconcile whatever bothers us? Okay, what about preparation? This is where it all begins. And if you get this wrong, not much else goes right. I'm mostly in this webinar talking to buyers and searchers, but sellers, if you're here, owners, brokers, you're going to hear a lot of reality checks. Rick, a searcher in New York City, told me he is not generating deal flow because he cannot focus and target my niche or get the kind of responses I'm looking for. Well, that's not the number one reason why buy-sell transactions fall through, but it's the number one reason why some searchers find worthwhile businesses to buy, but are rejected by brokers and sellers. Focus and target to win. You see, buying a business is all about search, because if you can't find it, you can't buy it. And it's about being best and first. That means first on scene. That means the seller's first choice and top of mind for brokers and sellers. Oh, and one more thing, searchers, beating buyer competition. You see, searchers can do a better job with what I call a winning business buyer marketing plan. And some of you who are tuned in have been through this process with me. Stick with it. Most of the people haven't heard this. It's things like knowing what to say first to brokers and owners and sellers. It's having a pitch deck. And that's that written presentation you use in face-to-face or online meetings with brokers and sellers. It's having realistic acquisition criteria. It's having a methodology, a process where we cover the timing, the targeting, the follow-up scripts. And I'm talking about the voice scripts that you use with brokers and sellers and buyers. Now, your marketing plan details your search, whether and how you're going to use letters, emails, social media, sources of referral, in-person meetings, etc. I know at least one of you is struggling with me on this one. It's important to reimagine your resume to instantly impress brokers. One of the persons in this call, one of my clients, we have recooked his resume. I think we're now on version number 6. It's a painful process, but it's looking better by the day. Because guess what? If we don't show a resume online or up front, that doesn't impress brokers or sellers, game could be over. And it can't be cooked like looking for a job. And we're also going to improve your online presence, even if it does not pertain to searching for a business. You know why? Everybody Googles. So you better have some online presence, and it better be the right one. We're going to evaluate your letter of interest. It needs to be in your marketing plan. For if you don't hand over your letter of interest to sellers, you might have to prematurely jump to an LOI. And what about NDAs and letters of intent? Is your confidential information protected, searchers, or is it just protecting the broker and the sellers? Especially if you're employed or you have some financial situation you don't want blurted out. Or maybe you don't even want anyone to know you're looking, as at least another person on this call is. You can't afford for anyone to know he's looking for a business to buy. Oh, and of course, how are you going to measure what you're doing, your productivity? What metrics? It's one of the things we have to work on. Okay, all of that is what makes up a winning plan of action for searchers. If you don't do those things, you're not going to get the results you could get. Keep in mind that what you voice first to brokers, owners, and sellers either repels them or motivates them to want to talk to you. Well, what about search? Well, in reality, neither side realistically anticipates what's coming. I call it the search to nowhere. Oh, and don't let attorneys and accountants search for you. When they directly contact owners and sellers on your behalf, it can cause sellers to prematurely involve their legal and accounting experts. And this is not good. Expect your potential to disappear when the teams get involved too soon. Remember, we're talking search, not due diligence. Matthew from Melbourne, Australia told me, and I think he's on right now, and we're going to talk again today at 4:30. One of the mistakes I made was that I wasn't specific enough with my industry criteria. Well, folks, window shopping until you discover what interests you is a fast way to put off brokers and sellers. And it's a good way to end up with a dumb deal. Not to mention your lost income opportunity every month you fumble on the playing field. That's an example of a little crater. It happens when searchers give up or blow up their opportunity. And it happens as they're entering the buy-sell arena. They're just not focused and they're not targeted. And when the materials they have to present themselves are just not good enough. So poor targeting, I'm going to beat this to death. Poor targeting is a deal stifling problem for searchers who don't properly prepare themselves to market themselves to brokers and sellers. And the problem gets worse. It gets worse for searchers who don't know how to find opportunity. You see, there's a big difference between searching and finding. And some of you have been through this. One of my most popular and valuable advisory services is searcher and search evaluation. It is an unhappy reality check for about 95% of the people who sign up for it, but not for long. We fix what's broken and add what's missing. Okay, what about seller offerings, asking prices, counter offers? Well, if you've been in the field for a while, you know it's La La Land and Fantasy Island. Kieran from Wolverhampton, England told me the number one deal killer is unrealistic expectations. Hey, I'm not sure that's the number one deal killer, but it's right up there. Near the end of this webinar, I'm going to tell you what I think is the #1 deal killer. But for now, most of the seller offering profiles I've seen, and you've probably seen them too, are not as good as they should be. They do not favorably impress discriminating searchers. And that's why so many businesses that could have been sold are not sold. And it's why it takes so long to get a done deal. Most buyers, on the other hand, blurt out way too early their opinion of value. You offend brokers and sellers when you challenge asking prices, and that can mean game over. Instead, buyers and searchers prove your worth to brokers and sellers. Make them want you. Defer your comments about pricing. Listen up, searchers. Don't get sucked into the trap. What do you think? When sellers or brokers want your opinion about asking price, say this: it would be presumptuous of me to disagree with you on price or terms, because I don't know everything the seller knows upon which she or he bases the asking terms. So how can I know the value? Do not challenge the seller's price or terms until the seller completes at least your most basic due diligence questionnaire. Before then, you do not know enough to have an informed opinion, searchers. Remember, sellers are precious. Romance them, and don't dump them too soon, or encourage them to dump you. Okay, what about due diligence? Well, it goes both ways. Searchers and companies are evaluating each other. Somebody said to me, maneuvering through due diligence is like threading needles while blindfolded. Sellers abort searchers who've online collected hundreds of due diligence questions, and then they hand them over to the seller and say, answer them all. Questioning is timing sensitive. My searcher clients, for example, begin with 16. That's right, only 16 questions. And we usually ask them during the initial interview with the broker or the owner, actually with both. The questions are not threatening. The seller or the broker does not feel like it's an interrogation. The questions are easily answered and highly revealing. We do not submit an LOI, or for those of you in the UK, heads of terms, if we don't like the answers to those 16 questions. But if we like the seller's responses, we hand over a questionnaire with perhaps 30 probing questions. We walk away if the seller balks. Sam in Chicago withdrew his letter of intent because the seller was too slow to respond to Sam's request for records. Now, of course, sellers abort searchers who dither or otherwise delay deal making. Remember, dragging your feet means lost opportunity for everyone. This is why we have to plan and know what we're doing before we get on the playing field. Brad, an attorney from Ohio, says deals fall through because of people not understanding the process. Well, you can say that again. Sellers of worthwhile companies quickly abort unrealistic or ill-prepared searchers. And searchers quickly walk away from unworthy opportunities. Because searchers, if you know how to search, finding good deals It's like waiting for buses. More are coming soon. And this relates to what Daniel from Texas told me. He said, it's crucial to match the right seller with the right buyer. Oh, I know that sounds pretty simplistic. Just wait. And that's why what searchers do up front determine the outcome, such as realistic acquisition criteria, not wasting time window shopping, and getting out talking to brokers. At the minimum, you're going to collect industry intelligence, but also searchers going directly to the kinds of companies you, the searcher, wants to own. These are the businesses not for sale, but could be if properly approached. Hey, don't forget during due diligence to hire a real estate inspection and a business examination by an industry expert. It's no fun after closing or completion of your deal to discover defects that will cost you money for repairs or replacements, and perhaps during the first months of your ownership. You see, it's common for deals to fall apart thanks to obsolete and defective machinery, equipment, fixtures, facilities, vehicles, even computers and technology. Well, what about when you get to pricing and valuing companies? You better have a good BS meter. And keep in mind that business situations are moving targets. As you're discovering things, the valuation is changing. Can you see, searchers, why it is not a good idea to challenge brokers and sellers too early on asking prices? A searcher told me that he aborted a pending deal because during due diligence, the owner made material changes to the operation of the company. And those changes were not acceptable to the potential buyer. And that's why it's a good idea for your letter of intent or heads of terms and your purchase and sale agreement to prohibit certain kinds of changes before closing. An investment banker, David from Indiana, told me deals fall through because of the seller's unrealistic price expectations. Well, there's another no kidding. And Mikey from Nottingham, England says, too many sellers believe their business is worth way more than it really is, and they try to convince buyers. Hey, that's a good point, isn't it? When searchers and sellers have to try too hard to be convincing, deals fall through. Hey, do-it-yourselfers, beware. Pricing and valuing businesses are not for amateurs. A professional business valuation is the irrefutable remedy when sellers, brokers, buyers disagree on price. Hey, you don't believe me? Well, here's what can happen when you get into it with sellers. You know, searchers, when you ruffle the seller's feathers. And it's not just about price. If sellers think you're deceptive, unrealistic, or abusive, they might secretly notify their friendly competitors that a troublesome so-called business buyer is searching in their industry. And guess what? You're blacked out. You're blackballed. You're shut out. It's over. And you won't know why you're getting the cold shoulder. Business brokers, by the way, won't put up with unreasonable or abusive buyers. Okay. As you're going along, the next usual step is financing. So what about financing the deal? Well, what this is about is what's in it for me. Because if you're looking for money or you're given money, everybody wants to know what's in it for me. Grace from Florida says, deals crater when it becomes clear that the potential buyer does not have enough cash for the down payment, plus for working capital plus a slush fund for post-closing emergencies. Some wishful buyers and sellers do not pay enough attention to the money question early enough. Like way at the beginning when doing the searcher marketing plan, for example. Oh, here are two things, searchers, you're not going to like. Number one, discovering you've been trying to buy too large a business, which you cannot afford or finance. Number two, discovering you've been trying to buy too small a business, which won't meet your minimum cash flow requirement, nor generate your target return on investment. So what about buying the largest business you can afford? Or what about buying the smallest business, meeting your minimum requirement? Well, the problem with buying the largest business is you might over leverage your purchase and excessively deplete your financial and managerial resources. And the problem with buying the smallest business is it may not generate enough forward momentum and sustainable competitive advantages for you to achieve your goal. So you see, the key is to optimize the size of the company with its ability to grow and to set up a favorable situation for you to buy another business that complements the first while keeping the first business. Well, unless there are good reasons for exchanging business number one with acquisition number two. But right about now, you'd be getting involved in negotiating and deal making. So what's going on in negotiating and deal making? Don't be surprised. Nearly everything that can go wrong does go wrong, at least temporarily. No matter how adept at negotiating you are, searchers, your power is diluted when you compete with other buyers. Sellers, of course, love buyer competition. It's one of the biggest benefits brokers deliver sellers. So buyers, how much can you afford to lose? Negotiating is about buyers and sellers trying to protect their downside and maximize their upside. Isn't it? Too many searchers and sellers get blindsided because they have too narrowly focused on the value of the company. You know, the price the buyer will pay. And then, late in their interactions, a moment of truth arises. It's when all the other terms for the buy-sell contract spin a different view of value and price. It's when searchers and sellers get to spend lots of time and money for legal counsel. And the disagreements can end a deal or reduce the feeling of happiness if a deal is done. Hey, what do you think is one of the most unpleasant surprises for buyers? How about discovering too late the difference between the buyer's pre-tax and after-tax return on investment, percentage-wise, in dollars, pounds, euros, whatever. Oh, and the actual number of years it takes for buyers to recoup their cash investment, especially when they're thinking about after-tax profit. Oh, and when they begin to earn a positive return on investment. You see, it's the the realization of this reality that can cause deals to crater. Nancy, who I think's tuned into this, a transaction attorney in Chicago, one of the really good ones, told me, getting legal counsel involved too late in the process where things can't be undone, big mistakes, makes my job harder and more expensive. Get the point, people? Assemble the right team before launching your search. You don't have to pay them until later, but they're on call to you. Okay, so here's a tip worth repeating. Buying a business is all about search. Because if you can't find it, you can't buy it. And it's about being best and first. Remember, first on scene, first choice. And I'm talking about first choice by brokers and sellers if you're searchers, and be top of mind searchers for brokers and sellers. You want them to think of you first. But you also don't want to forget, you need to be able to beat buyer competition or avoid it. Okay, you can learn more if you're searching in one of my books, How to Prepare Yourself and Find the Right Business to Buy. In my other book, once you're found a business that might be worth buying, is How to Buy the Right Business the Right Way. One more time, searchers, please contact me. We can build or improve your business buyer marketing plan. Okay, closing the purchase and sale. What if you get there? You're at closing. This is when you're going to reap what was sown by your advisory team. You know, way back when you did or did not get their advice. It's also time for you to discover if you hired the right kind of advisory team. All this could have been handled up front in your buyer marketing plan, searchers. So today, at closing, this is the day for executing the buy-sell documents. It's probably your last chance to restart or abort the deal. Enter stage left. Legal, accounting, taxation, and other counsel. Remember, these are the people who are doing the contracts and hammering out the disagreements that happen on closing day. The typical flies in the ointment are restrictive agreements and reps and warranties. And I know this is a little bit technical, but guess what? This is when things fall apart or you end up doing a dumb deal. So stick with me, okay, please? If earlier these things didn't crater deals, today is the last chance for them to crater them. Let's talk about restrictive agreements, just for like a minute and a half. They can restrict the use of property or its sale or transfer. Restricted agreements may be embedded in all kinds of documents, such as covenants with former owners, present owners, employees, customers, suppliers, landlords, governmental agencies, licensors and licensees, think about that, franchises, sources of financing, even the business buyer. That's you, searcher. There will be some restrictive agreements. See, I see these quite often pertaining to a right of first refusal, option to purchase, shareholder and partnership agreements. Oh boy. And the most frustrating restrictive agreements are the verbal agreements. You're not going to like the conversation about enforceability and what can happen when you're talking to your legal counsel. Now, if that did not excite you, you're going to love negotiating and living with reps and warranties. And this is why I say, discuss with legal counsel well before it's time to consider the elements of buy-sell agreements. I like my clients to do it right after we build their marketing plan and definitely at the beginning of due diligence. We ask the legal counsel for a realistic assessment of what are the normal post-closing reps and warranties and what's the contractual implication and the protections that are going to be provided. I mean, the real protection, not the stuff that it says in the contract. Don't be overly comforted by the reps in warranties in purchase contracts. What if there's a breach? And then recourse cannot be achieved. And I'm talking to sellers and searchers and buyers. One more time, in my opinion, the time for legal due diligence is during the beginning of searcher due diligence. It's a good idea to look into the kinds of issues that are going to be contained in reps and warranties, flesh them out with the owner early, evaluate the risks. Otherwise, you could spend a whole lot of time and money, only discover you're never going to sign a contract. So here's another tip. Hire advisors having a proven history of working on your particular issues for the kind and size of transaction you intend. Please hire experts who can prove they have facilitated deals that should and did occur. Hire doers, not talkers. Avoid advisors who don't know enough about small and mid-sized companies or transactions. Not wanting to make mistakes, these posers are more likely to poo-poo worthwhile ideas, or worse, bless lousy ideas. You close the deal. Somehow you got through everything we've been talking about. Deal is done. But what if you didn't get a good deal? Guess what? It gets worse. The cat's out of the bag. One of my most depressing webinars is avoiding or surviving disastrous business acquisitions. It's one of the services I'm called for when buyers discover they bought the wrong business, or they bought the right business the wrong way. But first, before they call me, they call their attorney, looking for a way to get out of the deal or for someone to sue. And when legal counsel says, keep dreaming, some of these disgruntled buyers call me. Well, we cannot unscramble eggs. We might be able to mitigate some of the downside, but if not, guess what? Live with it. Or try to find a greater fool to take it off your hands. You know, maybe a searcher who has attended the get rich quick and no money down seminars, which, by the way, I don't offer. The #1 deal killer. In my opinion, the #1 deal killer may not be what you think it is, but I think you'll agree it infects everything we've been talking about. And it affects everything you're going to do out on that playing field. The #1 deal killer, in my opinion, is misunderstandings. People misunderstanding you, and you misunderstanding documents and people. Misunderstandings arise up front in seller offerings. Sellers and brokers misunderstand searchers who mishandle themselves trying to market themselves to brokers and sellers. Misunderstandings continue during every interaction among people on the deal-making playing field. This is why savvy deal makers hire the best advisory teams to help them anticipate, interpret, and cope with misunderstandings. Because if you don't, deals fall through. It's smart, isn't it, to have the right someone looking over your shoulder? So why, you might be wondering, why do misunderstandings arise? Well, sometimes the parties do not inform one another. Or they don't ask, can you explain that another way? Instead, they walk away. It's because what people interpret, what they remember or record in their notes, sometimes does not accurately portray what was communicated. Think about it. Everything I've talked about in this webinar can be infected with misunderstandings. Hey, you might be misunderstanding this right now. That's why I think misunderstandings, especially if they're unresolved misunderstandings, are the #1 deal killer. But there's an antidote to reduce misunderstandings. Active listening. Accurate note-taking. So go to my website, partneroncall.com, lots of stuff there. You will save time and money. You'll achieve better deals. If we stay in touch, at least read the books, refer them to people. I can help you deploy the tactics and strategies from the books. Everything's at partneroncall.com. I'm Ted Leverette, the business buyer advocate with Partner on Call, saying thanks for listening.